Hello friends, you made it. We're here. I made it. I'm really glad you're here. If you've been here for a while, you know that it's been a long time since I podcasted. So I'm glad that you're back. And if you're stumbling across this podcast, this little show and share of knitting, I'm glad you're here and I hope you'll stay and check it out. My name is Anna and I'm a Canadian living in Alberta, Canada. I live out in the country in a mix of prairie and agricultural land and woodlands, and we're really close to Elk Island National Park, so we have a lot of wildlife here. We also raise our own livestock for food and have pets, and I live here with my husband and our 4 kids, and my parents are our neighbors, so lots happening all the time out here. And when I have moments to knit, I really savor it. So what will you find on this channel? Mostly it is my knitting designs. I am a knitwear designer, just independently. I also submit designs to be published by other companies or publications. So that's pretty much what I do here. I know that it is probably more fun to watch someone who knits other people's patterns that are already published so that you can be knitting the same things as them. And I would love to be knitting all those things also. I just currently don't have the time, but I hope that you will find some knitting inspiration in my designs and how all the details that I give you about them and how I make my decisions about what to design and how to design it. So I have been away for 2 months. My last podcast was the beginning of March. I'm very sorry for this delay. I try to podcast every 2 weeks, but March I had a submission due within a month and I had to buy yarn, have it delivered, knit the sample, write the pattern, and send that all back to the publication within a month. So I really did not have any hours to do anything else. And then April I released a pattern, so I did a little video about that pattern and all the information you need to know about that pattern if you want to knit it, and I guess that was all I could manage that month. So this is my first podcast in 2 months, and even though I haven't found time to record, I have found a lot of time to knit. So I have a lot of stuff to share with you. I feel like I'm very low in the viewfinder there. So sorry about that. I will adjust it a little bit. Hope you're still with me. So I will be talking about my finished objects, my works in progress, my acquisitions, anything related to my shop, recommendations, and farm news. And I usually have a segment at the end where I tell a story from my life or from a book, or I tell a little story and I call it Spin Me a Yarn. I don't know that I will have time during this episode to share that, but I will have lots of other things to share and stories along the way. So let's get right to it. First off, I will share my finished knitted items. If you've been here for a while, you know that I make knitted socks for my kids to wear on our trampoline during the colder months. And this was a pair that I made for my daughter out of scraps that I had in my stash. It was this is from Custom Woollen Mills, which is a mill here in Alberta, Canada. And it is their Mule spinner 2-ply, scraps of that, also scraps of Briggs and Little, their worsted weight yarn. So it's 100% wool, has no nylon in it. So these were for my daughter, and they wore holes in them. So I said that I was going to try to mend them and felt them, so that is what I did. I just used scrap yarn again and sewed it in. I didn't really use much of a technique that you would want to copy, but I did that, and then I felted them, so I put them in the washing machine and the dryer. They did not shrink that much. Like, I can actually stretch them back out to their original size. I had planned to felt them smaller so that my younger daughter would fit them this fall, but yeah, they did not shrink that much. So not a lot of felting happened, but hopefully those holes will stay closed for a while longer. And trampoline socks are not needed anymore. Since the last time I podcast at the start of March, we were still fully into winter, and now we are on May 4th and we are fully into summer. It is plus 30 today. The leaves haven't even come out on the trees yet. It's very bizarre, but we won't talk about that. We'll talk about the knitting. I made these mittens out of scrap yarn in my stash. I hope to keep making mittens and hats. My water bottle is heating up and making weird noises. Yeah, I hope to make scrappy hats and mittens and have like a gift stash to give to people and teachers and all that kind of thing. So that's what I did with these. I held yarns together. The cuff is 2 DK weight yarns held together, as is this next section, and this is an Aran weight yarn held with fingering weight. I don't really know what the yarns are, except that I know that this color here was an Aran weight in ptarmigan from Crux Fibers. I made these actually flat and seamed them up. I used the World's Simplest Mittens, which is a pattern by Tin Can Knits, and adjusted it to work it flat. Flat mittens were the first thing that I learned to knit as a new knitter. And even now I find knitting mittens in the round cumbersome and a little bit stressful on my wrist joints. So doing a small seam with a flat mitten is not a big ordeal for me. These ones are fine. They work great. I just think the seam and the thumbs are a little bit weird, like the seam in the thumb and the thumb itself was a little strange. I think I was not following the pattern by that point. I was just going for it and I did something kind of funky, but they seem to fit okay for a medium-sized women's hand. And so those will go into my gift box, and hopefully I will continue making more of these as I go. So I used, I think the gauge on these is about 16 stitches per 4 inches, and I used a 4.5 millimeter, and it cost me nothing because they were just scrap yarns. It's a great way to get a fast knit done because you can hold all your yarns together to get a bulky weight, and then you can get a lot more mittens done in the same amount of time. Part of the reason that I have not been here is that during the month of March I was knitting a sample for a publication that's coming out in June, so I cannot tell you too much about that. I can show you the yarn, and I thought I might show you the swatch that I based the design on. So this was my original swatch. The yarn is thinner in this swatch than what I used in the finished garment. And it is twisted stitches, which if you've been following my designs for a while, you know that I really enjoy twisted stitches, which look like 1x1 cables but are worked without a cable needle. You actually work the 2 stitches at the same time, and you never pull a stitch off the needle. So for this design, I used Farmer's Daughter fibers in the Reminisce worsted, which is a worsted spun and worsted weight yarn. It's sort of like their Recollect, but Recollect is woolen spun. And this one's smoother, a smoother yarn. I really enjoyed working with this yarn, and it really makes a very nice, smooth, soft fabric. This is color, I'll be your Huckleberry, and yeah, I don't know what else I can tell you about that design. I will let you know more when it comes out and where you can get it. Yeah, it will be an in-print design, and it's a beautiful publication. Yes. I think I bought five skeins of this. I honestly can't remember. It was $34 US. I had to purchase this yarn myself in order to make the design. It was absolutely worth it with how much the publication is paying me, but it was a big price tag at the start. So $34 US times 5 was $175. Is that right? And then converted to Canadian was over 200, and then plus shipping, which I had to buy expedited, which was also in US, so it came to almost $300 just for the materials to make that design. But it's all cost benefit, so it will be worth it in the end. And I will make sure to let you guys know more about that design when I can. The other two finished objects I have are Easter sweaters that I decided last minute to make for my girls. I knit these both in 1 week. In one of them I made out of yarns that I had left over from my stash. So that's this one. It is a cotton acrylic mix that I got from Michael's, which is a big box craft store here in North America. It was a very cheap, I think I bought it on sale ages and ages ago. I actually bought it to make a meadow sweet dress, but then I didn't end up making it. I just made some newborn hats. So it is called Coastal Cotton by Loops and Threads. And for a cotton yarn, it's actually really nice to knit with, and it makes this really nice marled. It's just one yarn, like it's one strand. I'm not holding yarns together. So the fuzzy portion of this yarn is polyester, and then I think it's a blown, actually. It looks like there's maybe not. Anyway, the lighter color is the cotton. So this is just a little t-shirt cardigan that I made for my 7-year-old daughter to wear over her Easter dress. And then these buttons were given to me by my friend Caitlin from Over the Moon Yarn Company. She made them herself. And when I went and visited her house, she gave me that along with some other lovely gifts. And Evelyn saw these buttons in my button collection and immediately wanted them on her sweater. And I was actually going to have her wear this without buttons the day of Easter, but she insisted that she wanted buttons on them, so I had to find time to sew buttons on Easter morning. And then she wore it and was quite thrilled. So this is not a published design. This is actually improvised, and I just tried it on her as I went, which is the great thing about this construction method. The Cardi that I released in April has a similar method, although the sleeves are not done in the same time they're picked up. There's a cardigan vest that is currently in testing that uses this design construction, and I just plan to keep using it in all my future designs. So if you're interested in how this is worked, just stick around, and I'm sure there'll be lots of opportunity for me to explain that to you. I just don't want to do it currently when I don't have any published designs that I can refer you to. So I made that one for my 7-year-old, and then my 5-year-old, I bought yarn. I got this Lana Gatto, and it is a mix of merino and acrylic. It's 50% of each. I bought this from my most local yarn store, which is called, I can never remember what it's called. It's Cottage Knits. It's in Fort Saskatchewan, Alberta. A tiny little yarn store run by Paulette, and she is starting to get some new very interesting yarns in. It used to be a lot of acrylic yarns, but now she's getting a little bit more wool, and she even has some hand-dyed yarns in there. So I got this one, which is a good soft yarn for kids, and I think I bought 4 or 6 of them. I think it was 4. Yeah, so that's $30 in the yarn, but I really only used 2 for this little sweater. So it's the same construction method. This one I got away with not putting buttons on. I haven't even put buttonholes in. I figured if she really wanted buttons, then I could do some afterthought buttonholes where you just kind of pull the stitches apart and use sewing needle and thread to sew a buttonhole around it, and it just kind of widens that hole that you opened up. If not, then I will just leave it. I'm quite happy with those the way it is. So again, I just tried it on her. This one has a little bit of a lace panel on the shoulder that continues into the sleeve. The sleeve is more ribbed than I anticipated, but it's pretty cute. It still fits her well. It just is fits her a little snugger than I thought it would. Yeah, so I thought that was pretty good for getting them done in 1 week. And then I only used 2 balls of this, so really it only cost me $15 for this one. And this one I had 1 full ball and a partial ball for this one. The short sleeves helps with that, and it's also cropped. Oh, I also did like a little, I had the lace from the sleeve increases continue down the arm, the sides of the body. It didn't really add that much. I probably wouldn't have done that again, but it's hard to notice it. It's really the yarn in this one that is the feature. In my last episode, I was still working on this cardigan vest. This is my third sample of a current test knit. It also uses the same construction method as those little Easter sweaters. So you start at the back neck and then increase out. This one is worked in Longway Homestead Shetland worsted. So it is a Canadian yarn and it is a really, really nice fabric. It still has little bits of hay in it, which I personally love. And you just get to like pick them out as you knit. And it's an open front cardigan vest, so you just throw it over your shirts, or really you need like a fitted shirt because it's quite fitted, or a dress. It is in, the gauge is 17 stitches per 4 inches, and I used a 3.5 millimeter, and and I used 2 skeins of the Shetland worsted, and with shipping that cost me around $80 Canadian. And it has no buttons, no buttonholes, just a simple edging along the fronts and armholes. And the hem. So at 17 stitches per 4 inches and this small amount of fabric that you make, it really is a fairly quick knit. Yeah, it has a bit of a slight V-neck at the front. Okay, my final finished object is a improvised scarf. I made a mala scarf. So it has the same stitch pattern as my mala top, which is just released today. Skinny scarves are kind of having a heyday right now, both in knitting and in like the fashion world. So I thought I would make one and see what I thought about it. Personally, I don't think it's for me. Like, it's cute or whatever, but I just feel like it's too fussy for my style. So this one I made with a fingering weight yarn, hand-dyed yarn. This one is from Smash Knits. Smash Knits is a Manitoban dyer, and Ashley has just an amazing color sense. Every time I go into Statement Junkie, which is one of my local yarn stores, I'm always drawn to her yarn, and I don't know that that's her section, and I'm always drawn to it. This one is so pretty, and I cannot remember what it's called, so I'm sorry about that. I don't have the label anymore, but honestly, just pick a color of Ashley's and you won't be disappointed. So this one was pretty much an entire skein. I had used a little bit of it in my scrappy Gardy Cardi, but otherwise this is 100 grams of an entire scarf. So it is started at one end and increased, and then you just work until you get to the other end, and then you decrease down. So yeah, I pretty much have this pattern written out. I will not publish it unless there's like a lot of people that want me to write it out and have it tested. Is that something that you would like to knit? Like just the same thing over and over and again? Another problem is that it's very difficult to block this scarf, and the edges, these garter edges, are not wide enough and they tend to roll in. So you really have to block it or else it rolls in on itself. And it's just kind of annoying. It's not the end of the world, but it's just not a great finish. So I just, yeah, sometimes you just got to do things to do them, and you learn something along the way that you can use for future projects. Or you can learn something about yourself, like I do not like skinny scarves and I will not wear them. But if you are someone who likes skinny scarves and wears them and are dying to knit this, leave me a comment, and if there's a few of you, then I might write that up, because it really, I already have the charts done. It really would not be very difficult to write it up. It's just I don't want to write it up. If everybody else feels the same about this skinny scarf, then I won't bother. Okay, we're on to works in progress. I have 5 different works in progress. The first one is in this bag by Isabel Gosselin. It has leather, hardware, leather attachments, and nice metal chunky hardware. And it is another Musselburgh hat. This is one of my knit in the car projects, and right now it's glorious because it's just at the stockinette in the round stage. So it is in the Creative Knitter fingering weight. This is called Plant Lady. This green, which looks exactly like the color of the green tiny little leaves that are coming out of the trees right now. Yeah, so not much to say about that. I always plan to have a Musselburgh hat on the go because they're just great stockinette travel projects, and they're great gifts too. Sort of a one size fits all that you don't get with mittens or socks. I have another hat on the go. This is a Musselburgh ribbed. So I did the same thing as the Musselburgh hat, but instead of stockinette, I increased in ribbing. This is worked in, oh, here's my Creative Knitter label. So this black ribbed hat is in Woolfolk Far, just in black. I have 2 skeins of this. I should have also said that the green yarn from the Creative Knitter was a gift from Stephanie. Lovely, appreciated gift. But this one I purchased myself. So these, I bought 2 skeins for a hat. This is a gift for the husband of a friend of mine. If you don't know, I used to be a biologist, and I still keep my hand in it by volunteering as a Bluebird bander. So I monitor and look after, replace, repair a route of 66 birdhouses, all near my house, near Elk Island National Park. And it was a route started in 1980 something by a man named Roy Elson, and he put up the original ones and he maintained them. And some of his, not his original boxes, I'm not sure about that, but some of his boxes that he maintained, he is now passed, are still around and they're still functional. The Bluebirds absolutely love these old boxes, but there are lots of them that are falling apart and I cannot find time or money to replace these boxes. So the husband of my friend is an amazing woodworker, and he offered to, out of the goodness of his heart, build Bluebird houses for me as replacement boxes. So he built 52 of these boxes. I was not expecting that. Chelsea asked me how many I wanted, and I said, well, if you do less than 10, that would be amazing. That would limp me through the next few years. But I do have 66 boxes that eventually will all need to be replaced. And so he made 52. He bought the wood, he bought the screws, like just absolutely blew me away. So I don't know, does a hat match that gift? I don't, probably not, but I'm making Greg a hat to say thank you for his efforts and for helping out the Bluebirds. So that's why I bought this very expensive yarn from Woolfolk. It is $30 a skein, which is quite a bit for me. It is pure wool, I believe. Yeah, 100% merino wool, and it's like this kind of chain. I don't know if you can see that, but it's almost like the yarn is braided. So my daughter was with me when I was buying this yarn. Greg said he likes black, so I was looking for a black yarn, and my daughter got this one and she was just like, oh, this is the softest yarn, can you please get this one? So that's why I got that. I don't know if it's a great idea to buy expensive 100% wool, untreated wool for a gift, but I will just have to give him like a little laundry care note about it. And that's sort of why I have the Woolfolk Far label attached to the tail end of my yarn here, so that I can put it with the gift, tie it to the gift, and it has the care instructions there. It says hand wash cool, lay flat to dry. Yeah, so this one just goes with me in the car right now. It's kind of taken over the green hat until it gets done. And so he said he wanted black and not folded brim and tight fitting. So that will not take me very long. Next, I have the yoked sweater that I've been knitting up for Brooklyn Tweed. They sent me the yarn as a collaboration, and I have gotten most of it done. So now I am currently writing up the pattern for this, and I will be calling for testers. It is coming out in November, so I will need some dedicated testers for this one. Whoever likes to knit thick wool sweaters in the summer if you live in the Northern Hemisphere. Yeah, I don't really have a lot to say about that. I I do want to say one thing about Brooklyn Tweed. So I thought that these two yarns were naturally colored. I didn't think that they were dyed. But when I washed this one, it actually the water ran black. So it is over dyed. Most people probably don't have this issue. We live out in the country, we have a well, and our well water is very salty. That means it's very basic. So I don't know much about yarn dyeing, but from what I've been told, you set the yarn with an acid, citric acid or vinegar. You set the dye into the yarn with acid. So a basic water is the other end of this pH spectrum. So if you want to keep your yarn, the color fastness of your yarn, you should add vinegar to your hand wash solution. But my water is very basic, so it's actually doing the opposite and releasing the dye from the yarn. So I have to add a lot of vinegar to yarn that is dyed, or to the wash water for yarn that is dyed, but I didn't realize this was dyed. So it is. So they must dye the wool. Maybe they get a lot of white, naturally white colored wool yarn from their flocks, and so they have to dye it to get any dark shades. I'm not sure, but I just thought I would mention that if you usually have to add vinegar to your wash water, you should be aware that this color, it's called cast iron, is dyed, and it will run in a basic solution. It didn't run too badly into the lighter color, so I'm not too worried about it. I just rinsed it out with, as soon as I realized it was running, I got rid of that water and then I rinsed it with vinegar solution. This is a problem I've had before with some dyed yarn, and I think it just has to do with my well water. Just currently grading it. I did grade it to 9 sizes, and then I realized when I did the finished measurement calculations that those 9 sizes weren't actually reaching the top end of the size range that I usually like to hit. The finished bust was only 55 or something, so I've added a couple more sizes, and I need to grade those and send it to tech editing, and then I will call for testers. So if you're interested, if you're really keen to knit this as a test knitter, please do sign up for my email newsletter. That's where I select testers first, and then if I can't find some, I go to Instagram. So if you want first dibs on especially the mid-range sizes from 3 to 6, 3 to 5, 3 to 6, those ones fill up really fast. So get on the newsletter if you're interested in that. This design is 18 stitches per 4 inches, and I'm doing it on 3.75 and 3.25, but I wouldn't get too worked up about that. I'm a loose knitter, so typically I recommend a bigger needle size for my patterns, and testers usually use a bigger needle size to obtain gauge, so I wouldn't put too much stock on what needle size I personally use. If you've been here for a while, you might remember the Seed Star blanket, which is a seamless center out blanket worked in the round. It is going to be released in July. I really enjoyed the construction of that blanket, and I really like it as a background project to work on when you have that project that you've just finished and you're trying to get yarn, or you have to wind up yarn. You have an evening in front of you and you have nothing to knit at that moment. I really like to have some background projects that I can just pick up and put down, and this is one of them. So this is another blanket. It's center out again. It's stockinette and an eyelet row. and it's just continued. That's just a repeat all the way out. It won't be so lumpy and weird once it's blocked. I'm making this in BC Garn Bio Shetland, and it's 100% wool. It's 280 meters per 50 grams, which is that's a lace weight. And the Seed Star Hap I also did in a lace weight. I really don't find it cumbersome to knit. It's at a looser gauge, which when you wash that wool yarn, it fills out those gaps and makes a really nice fabric. When it's a background project, I'm not stressed about time. It's just an enjoyment. I've never really made a blanket where that's not true. I have made lots of blankets with deadlines, but currently I don't make blankets with deadlines because they're just so big. And to be fair, my mother actually took over this project for me again, which, if you remember the Seed Star blanket, she also finished that one for me. So to be fair, there's also that, but I really don't mind a lace weight blanket, and it just makes such a nice light fabric at the end that you can use as a blanket, or you can fold it in half and use it as a shawl. So I am using this gray. This is the last of the gray for the center portion, and then for the last bit I will change to some kind of a lace pattern. I haven't decided what that will be yet. And I have this yellow. So this one is called, let me see what, I think this is Anthracite. Oh, this one's dark gray. And this one is wheat. I'm pretty sure this is Anthracite though. I bought this from the Fiber Nook in Edmonton, and they were out of Anthracite. So this one is slightly darker, this dark gray, but I think it will be not as noticeable if you make a change on the eyelet round. I also haven't decided how to transition from this dark to the wheat. I think it almost needs like a light gray in between. I haven't decided yet. If you have any ideas like how to stripe that or transition it in some way from, this will be, I think I'm going to do this in some sort of a feather and fan lace for the edge, so that you have a little bit of interest at the end when you're kind of over that project, and you have some motivation to keep going. The last work in progress is something I just started over the weekend, a couple days ago. This is a new t-shirt design. It is going to be a modified drop shoulder, so not modified. Yes, modified, that's what it's called. So it's a little bit wider than my shoulder and will go down, but then you'll increase slightly at the underarm, so it's not a pure drop shoulder design. It is loosely based on the shape of the t-shirt that I'm currently wearing, which is just a basic white t-shirt. This is a set and sleeve design, but I didn't want to overcomplicate it, so I just going with a drop shoulder. This is being worked in Sadness Garn Line, which is a cotton, viscose, and linen blend from Norway. I bought this from Statement Junkie. Its color is 1002. And yeah, not much to say about that. I'm really enjoying the knit itself right now. It is a So I said it was a drop shoulder, but it's also a yoke. So you're working the drop shoulder portion, and then you're working the stitches. So it is like a yoke. So I'm just continuing that. I don't have a very long cord on it right now, so I can't really show you, but it, yeah, it's pretty simple. It will just be knits and purls. I'm thinking a garter neckline. I'll pick up a garter neckline. I'll do garter edging on the sleeves and hem, so no ribbing. And it's mostly stockinette going around and around. And the great part of this construction is it's easy to try on and tell if it's going to fit you well. My only concern at this point is that I will not have enough rows to increase the sleeves. So I may, for larger sizes, I may need to add more increases at the start of the sleeve in order to get enough rows. Otherwise, my armhole depth will be way too big in order to get enough rows so that you can increase sufficiently. I would have to have a really deep armhole, and that's not really ideal. So yeah, we'll see where that goes. I'm hoping to power through that and write it up pretty quickly. Time is screaming by here. So I will tell you just a bit about my shop. So I did release the Gardy Cardi, which is a scrappy top-down garter cardigan, and it was very well received. Thank you so much to everyone who shared, gave their support either in interaction on Instagram or Ravelry or here on YouTube, and all those who purchased it. I was really blown away. It really inspired me to keep going, and I just love that some people are knitting it already. We do have a little knit along going on Ravelry. I think there's about 2 people there that are knitting, but so if you want to join, I understand it's getting very warm in the northern hemisphere, so maybe people just are not very keen on knitting that right now. I completely understand. And then just today, this morning, I released the Mala top, which is a summer top-down sleeveless top. So go and check that out if you're interested. If I manage to get this video up before Sunday, there will be a sale running. Otherwise, it's probably finished by the time that this video is up, but I will put all the information below of where you can find these designs. Everything I talk about will be in the description below. As for other test knits that are going on right now, the Seed Star Hap is still happening until July. I think all but one have finished theirs. So we're just waiting until the release date, which was set by the fiber company who gave me the yarn for that design. And the cardigan vest that I showed as a finished object is currently in test, and it will be hopefully released at the end of this month or start of June. I have a few recommendations. So if you have not seen Danish Musings, Helle is a very well-spoken Danish knitter. But she teaches English, so she's hardly has an accent, and she is a very accomplished knitter, and she also has wool and mohair sensitivity, which if you know, I suffer with that as well. So I really have enjoyed all of the observations she has about different kinds of mohair and mohair alternatives. Daniela, who is a Knitter's Suitcase, has started podcasting, and she is just a lovely human being. She was a tester for me for one of my tank tops. I think it was the Seed Star tank, and she was just a joy to have in that test knit group, and that joy has definitely transferred over to her YouTube channel. So she loves color. Does these fantastic journal entries where she sketches out her finished object and writes all the information, and it's just beautiful. So I recommend going and watching her podcast. And finally, North Knit Corner has recently had some hard health news. I find she knits so many things. Her production level is just amazing, and Anne is a lovely person too. So I just encourage you to go and watch her podcast and show her some love during this tough time. I think that is all. Oh, I have some farm news, yes. So like I said at the beginning of the podcast, we do have some animals here. We had 6 sheep. 2 of them were accidental rams, so that they were castrated, but one of the items was missed and was still actually inside their abdomen, where you can't remove it without putting them under general anesthesia. And apparently, once a ram has started showing aggressive behavior, even if you do castrate them at that point, they still have learned this behavior and continue to do it. So they were causing quite the havoc here on the farm, and were quite an inconvenience, and also were damaging property and other creatures that live here. So they could not stay. Unfortunately, there is no market for rams. That number one, they're infertile because they were castrated incorrectly, and they are aggressive. So they kind of have the worst of both worlds there. So we did send them to the slaughterhouse, and now they are in our freezer. Personally, it's very difficult for me to go through this. I know in my head that if I eat meat, I should be able to do the actions required in order to get that meat on the table. It's pretty hypocritical otherwise. But as a tender-hearted person, I have a hard time with that. So I did have a hard time letting them go, but now that they're gone, it's just, what really was the best decision that we had. And as an added bonus, they are very tasty. So I'm actually, it's a weird thing where you love an animal so much that like you've put care into them. Then when it's time for them to go, it almost feels like a betrayal to give what they've produced to someone else. We felt that because they were rams, they wouldn't actually be good to eat. They'd be more like mutton. So they were 2 years old and were fully rams. But thankfully Shetlands grow slowly, and that can mean that you can eat them for longer. They're actually quite small when they're the age that you would butcher a meat sheep breed. So I'm just glad that they didn't end up as a waste or as dog food, and that we can honor their lives by making delicious meals out of what they produced. As for other farm news, we plan to raise chickens again this year for meat. We are hoping to also raise some pigs. We will be putting in a garden, although this weather is just so bizarre, and I just don't know how a garden will go this year. We have had 0 rain this spring. We had very little snow. Everything is dry. The dugout behind our house is, you can actually see the bottom, which at this time of year, the dugouts should be the fullest they'll be all season. So to start out in a drought makes me wonder whether it's even worth putting a garden in. All our rain barrels are empty. We cannot water with our well can't handle that. So I'm not sure what the future holds for garden prospects. There's just really no rain in the forecast. So we'll just plan for livestock for now, and if we get some rain, then I'll put a garden in too. I think that's all. Thank you for being here. Thank you for staying to the end. Thank you for sticking with me, even though I often disappoint and don't show up. I really appreciate that you're here. I really appreciate the connections that we've made. I appreciate your interaction just by watching this video. Liking and subscribing is amazing. Commenting is even better. Yeah, we all love knitting here, so I just appreciate that you're here and that you have some interest in what I am making and what I am spending my time on with my knitting. I hope you have a great May. I will not promise that I will be here again in May, but until I see you again, take care. Bye.